Joining you from Austin, Texas on this overcast day, it's Color Commentary, and we are Adrian Guarzales.
And Michael Pechek. So, we want to do a recap of our past week in Magic.
Let's do it, and I actually did not get to play F&M, but I will take a brief jaunt here and say I've been playing a lot of Eldrazi Stompy on Moto, and it's sort of gotten me realizing just how punishing Moto is with via prize support, because if you 3-2, you still just break even, but, I've been having a good time, so it's whatever.
Yeah, and you get to play Legacy, so
yeah,
that's a fun format, It's kind of our sister format. Like, there's definitely similarities between them in terms of they're both formats that really reward play skill and, knowing the meta. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
And I am the 1% now.
I don't even think on Moto it's less than that, though, because they can reprint whenever they want.
Yes.
So, it's not like in paper where, owning Legacy is a little bit of a extravagant thing. But I did get to play F&M, and
yeah.
I held true on me saying that I'm going to be a scrub and I'm going to play a simple aggro deck, and I went undefeated. I wound up splitting in the final round just to get out of there a little early, but played mono red, swung for 20 with Kiln Fiend, came in with piles of tokens from a Crone Crusader, felt good about it.
Were you playing that guy with the turn 2 potential, the Immolating Soul Eater?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's turn 3.
Okay.
I've seen a list that can turn 1 with it that runs Pyretic Ritual and Gorilla Shaman, and it's just kind of all in on turn 2ing them. But I'd prefer something that's an actual deck that doesn't just die to a Diabolic Edict.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I had a good time. I played against Affinity in the first round. A very blue heavy build of Affinity.
I believe you said he had a lot of counters.
Yeah, we talked
Counter
afterwards about boarding, and I was like, yeah, I just pulled in 3 smelts because, I want to blow up stuff. I want to blow up blockers to get through, basically. And he pulled in, I want to say most of a playset of Dispel and most of a playset of Negate, which seems very, very color-intensive and also very blue for Affinity.
And I also have to say, against the mono-red heroic deck, I'm not sure I agree with that, because even if you don't resolve the spell, you're still getting the triggers off the Kiln Fiend and off of the
heroic. Yep.
Heroic guys. I would prefer to just bring in, at most, 4 Hydroblasts and call it a day, yeah. Or with my sideboard, it'd probably be 2 Hydroblasts, 2 Bolts, and a Cop Red.
Yeah. I think that, as you said, barring the blowout from a Temur Battle Rage, I don't think counterspells are super great against that deck because it's all either on cast or when you target them. I think it helps mitigate the problem. I don't think it stops it, which I think was the big thing. And then turn 2, I played against a blue-white Tron variant.
You steamrolled him, right?
Yeah, it was not a pretty game. We were done in 10 minutes, and it's not because the deck was bad. It's just that's an awful matchup for Tron, and it's just. Got to go fast.
So line up your first 3 turns for me.
So first 3 turns. Turn 1, I'm generally going to want either a Crone Crusader, which is the 1/1 that when you target it with spells, you get other 1/1s with haste, or Satyr Hoplite, which is just a 1/1 that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever I target it. I'd want one of those, and then ideally turn 2, I hit either the Kiln Fiend or Immolating Soul Eater. Something that's a big threat that I can just blow my opponent out with. And then turn 3 is kind of the turn I want to go off. If I've got the Kiln Fiend on board, I'm going to want to, if I've got 3 mana available, I'm going to want, Brute Force? The red giant growth.
I don't remember, but yeah,
I think it's
I know
Brute
what you're
Force.
talking about. It's +3/+3 for R.
Yeah, and then, 2 Mutagenics and a Temur Battle Rage?
Is that just game?
I think it is. I'm not even going to do the math because
it sounds like game.
If I've got a Kiln Fiend, there's 10 points just from the Mutagenics and the Kiln Fiend triggers, plus Double Strike. Ideally, it's a deck that wants to be winning on turn 3 or so. It can go wide, which I like. I like the fact that it is not an all-in deck, especially with Teachings and Mono Black being the format.
Is the fact that it's not all in the reason you would prefer it to say the Is It version of this deck, which uses the Niv-Mizzet Cyclops?
So I like the fact that I have a token generator for, again, Mono Black and Teachings. It's really nice to be able to say, I can just crap out a bunch of tokens at instant speed, which, while not, the best, does mean that I can have sacrifice fodder. I actually think that in a lot of cases, Kiln Fiend, the Nivik Cyclops Kiln Fiend Delver deck is better. Because you do get counter spells. You do get card draw. Because it's a mono red deck. Mono red and Pauper is very much, I'm going to basically go through maybe the top 15 of my deck, and if I haven't won by then, I'm probably just going to lose. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if I consider Delver Fiend more all-in, but I definitely think that they are different decks that sometimes do just win through the same methods. Just pumping the living hell out of a Kiln Fiend and bashing in with Temur Battle Rage. So, I don't know. I find it more engaging, especially because, in a way, I like the fact that there aren't counterspells, because it makes me just have to, think through, okay, can I win on this turn? Assuming every mana they have, all the mana they have open is going into a counterspell, or an edict. Yeah, and mono reds feel good. I haven't been doing so great lately at FNM, so I showed up with a deck that wins on turn 3, because that's about as salty as I'll forget. Yeah. And also, there was someone at FNM who recognized me from this podcast, and I am blanking on his name, and he introduced himself.
Oh, you were a bad podcaster.
Yeah, no. But it was really cool, because...
Make sure that you tell him next time you see him.
And thank you for listening. It was... I was a little bit weirded out by the whole thing, just because I didn't expect someone to be like, oh, hey, you're from that podcast, Color Commontary.
2 episodes in, already famous.
Well, not even famous. It was just a weird sensation for me. I've never had someone recognize me in a public setting from my voice.
Well, to be fair, we do have our pictures on the website.
True, but I don't know how many people are actually looking at the About Us on the website. Yeah. I don't know. It was still super cool, and thanks for listening. Glad to see that we've got fans in the hometown. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we got some good stuff lined up today. We got a deck discussion more than a deck tech. What was the guy's name? He wanted to be credited as New HJ, and he sent in a list for Delve Reanimator.
Yes, and for those of you not in the know, for those of you in the know, just need a quick refresher. Delve Reanimator is the deck that runs Grimog Angler, Sultai Scavenger, Hooting Mandrills, Ulamog's Crusher, as well as 2, maybe 3, of a cycle of the Dragon Auras, which are from Scourge.
Yep.
And when a creature enters the battlefield with converted mana cost 7 or more...
6 or more.
6 or more, okay.
Yeah.
They come from the graveyard and attach to the creature. And the 2 in particular that make this deck run are Dragon Breath, which give haste and fire breathing, and Dragon Fangs, which I believe give +2/+2?
+1/+1 and trample.
Okay.
That's the important part. The rest of the cycle is still interesting, but I see them less. The black one gives fear and maybe +1/+0. The white one gives +1/+1 in vigilance, and the blue one is actually an interesting one, which I've seen played in Reanimator lists because it grants flying, so form of evasion, but it also cycles for 2, colorless. So,
do these not cycle?
No. They don't. So
wow.
The blue one has the added advantage of, if you don't have a discard outlet, you can just cycle it and draw a card.
Because the idea is that you'll play a Tormenting Voice or a Faithless Looting, or Satyr Wayfinder, Commune with the Gods, anything to bend these, and then you'll reanimate using Exhume, the creature, attaching it to the creature.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things is, now that they have access to the Delve creatures, this deck is a lot better than it was, because... Before, you just kind of are trying to reanimate stuff with 4 copies of Exhume, because Exhume is the only reanimate option for Pauper. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of a little more all-in. This way you kind of have the backup plan of all right, so I've used my 4 Exhumes. I still have a Gurmag Angler that's still a 5/5 that's hard to deal with and can crack in for damage.
Something that's interesting to me is this deck and the past deck we covered seem to just fold to Relic or Nile Spellbomb.
I've played against this one, and the thing is, this seems like a much more explosive one. It can get a turn 2 Ulamog's Crusher with haste online, which against a lot of decks is just game, because the Annihilator 2 trigger is going to go on the stack, even if you have a creature in play already, even if you have 2. you're down to no board presence, and they're hitting your lands next time. Like, very, very explosive starts. But one of the things I thought was interesting is there's multiple ways to build this. The list that New Age Jay sent us is a Jund-colored one. I've seen a Dimir blue-black version that ran like Careful Study, Merfolk Looter, and that sort of stuff to get things in the bin. Because Careful Study is basically just a one-use Faithless Looting. It also let him run counterspells to protect his threats, which I thought was interesting. And because the dragon enchantments all just come in from the graveyard, he was running a couple of off-color ones.
Yeah, you don't need them to be on color. Although I would argue that the green and the red one are the absolute musts for the deck, and then you could maybe play the white or the blue one.
Well, I think he was playing the blue and the red one. I'm not a huge fan of the red one without being able to use the pumping. Most of the time it doesn't matter, but
Well, it does give haste, so...
It does give haste. That's the important bit. Like, just being... Like, the idea of the turn 2 crack in against a control deck or something that tapped out for something, and then dropping them to, like, one land and no creatures, that is probably game a lot of the time. So, I definitely think that this is an interesting archetype that, is almost there. It's a little fragile to Grave Hate. Like, Relic is definitely a problem. Niall Spellbomb. Bajuka Bog, yes. I've definitely played against this with a Bajuka Bog and Karoo lands, and hoo boy, that, like, it was in paper, so, I completely decimate his graveyard with a Bajuka Bog. He loads it up. The next turn I play out Dimir Aqueduct, bounce the Bajuka Bog, and he's just like, oh, okay, I guess this is happening. Like,
yep.
I do think it definitely has a weakness to that, but at the same time, like, for example, you can't activate either of those in response to paying a Delve cost.
Correct.
So, I do think that the Hooting Mandrills, Sultai Scavenger, Gurmag Angler make a very good backup plan for this. I think there's also, I was talking earlier, there is a version of this that plays kind of like Living End in Pauper, which I thought was interesting.
Take that away.
So it runs all the cyclers, like Monstrous Carabid, the Minotaur that when it comes in, it hits a flyer for 3. I think it even runs Street Wraith. It runs Jungle Weaver, the 6/5 with Reach. And most of its stuff is high cost. It then runs Demonic Dread, which is 1 in a red and a black,
yes.
And target creature can't block this turn. But the important thing is it has Cascade, and the only 2 or less drop that isn't a land is Exhume. So basically, what you do is you either hardcast Exhume with a bunch of these fat 6-power vanilla beaters in the yard, or you cast Demonic Dread and Cascade into it. So it's kind of Living Endy. It doesn't get everything back, which is bad.
But it doesn't wipe your opponent's side of the board.
Yeah, like, I think people just call it Living End because that's the easiest comparison. It does have, Cascade into Reanimate. That's, I feel, the big thing people are latching on to. It's an interesting deck. I've seen it play. It doesn't seem dreadfully good. It seems...
Dreadfully, I see what you did there.
Yeah. Like, it's an okay deck. It exists. And that one definitely is a little bit more fringe because they don't really have another line of play besides reanimating a fat thing. Like, I definitely think with Reanimator decks, you want a backup line of play. Like, you want something else there. Especially in a format dominated by efficient creatures and cheap removal. Because that Ulamog's Crusher, no matter how much haste you give it, it still does just die to a Diabolic Edict. Sorry.
Dies to Doomblade is the argument here. But also, well, it's not just that. Like, so you get rid of the creature, and then they have to find another one of their reanimates, or not reanimate, Exhume. And it's like there's only 4 of them in the deck.
There's only 4 of them in the deck. They've also got to get something else in the bin. If there's Grave Hate, like, I feel like there's a lot of things that this deck has issues with. I think Game 1, it's got a pretty good game plan. Like, reanimating a fat thing turn 2 seems fine in this format.
Something I also want to point out as I look over this list, it says this list is like 650 ticks. 4 of those ticks are the Exhume.
Yeah. I mean, most of this is more recent stuff, that...
Well, it's also like we discussed, it's a unique effect in Pauper, and it's not the only reanimation spell. It's not even... But, I mean, people play this card in, like, Legacy.
Yeah.
It's a eternal format playable card, but since it's the only one in Pauper, you sort of have to get it if you're looking at playing this strategy.
Well, because it's a quote-unquote fair symmetrical effect.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about Exhume, is, like, that gets way worse late game. Like,
yes.
You're going from, like, turn 2, it's unlikely to have anything in the bin. And because of that, it's usually a free, just you reanimate. Late game, they probably have something in the bin. They're probably at least getting a chump blocker back. So it kind of is a diminishing return style card. So I definitely think like that's the biggest weak point of this deck, is the fact that it's a Reanimator deck running 4 reanimation spells. This version that we're looking at right now with the Jund colors doesn't have a lot of actual card draw. It has card selection and like looting, but it doesn't really have a good way to like get deep in its deck very quickly. That's why I kind of like the blue-black version, because it does give you control variants to like counter spells and assorted tempo tricks.
And Mold Drifter's not a bad reanimation target.
Yeah, I mean,
draw 2 cards and get a 2/2 beater.
One of the things I do think is interesting with these, with this list in particular, is I kind of think that a 1 of Undying Evil might be interesting in here.
It has 3 in the board.
Oh, it does. Okay, I think you could arguably play that main board, just given how much removal is in this format.
And maybe cut Hooting Mandrills?
I could make an argument for Commune with the Gods.
Oh, yeah.
Commune with the Gods seems good late game. Early game, it doesn't seem that great, because it's not getting you... Like, how bad does that feel if you flip 4 Exhumes and a land? Which is obviously, the extreme, but it gets you 2 card types that you might not always want in hand.
And so here's a suggestion. And you could run it alongside Commune or not with Commune. This is kind of a recent deck list. I'm a little surprised Vessel of Nasency isn't in this deck.
Yeah, because Vessel of Nasency will grab any permanent, right?
Yeah, any permanent, and it'll... I don't think it digs as deep as Commune. I believe it's... I think 4 cards?
Let's pull up Vessel of Nasency here. It is top 4, okay.
But you get whatever you want. You
get any
permanent. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think,
Does this seem a little better to you?
So I think this list was already running Grisly Salvage, which can get a land, and it runs Satyr Wayfinder, which can get lands. I don't know. I really wish they had a variant of this effect that let you get an instant or sorcery, because that means you can get Faithless Looting. Because if I remember correctly, the guy locally who had the blue-black version, he was running Forbidden Alchemy, which is pretty sweet in that deck. Because
yeah, that's a good card in that deck.
You look through the top 4 or 5.
Yeah. You'll look through some cards, you'll put some in the library, and you'll put one in your hand.
Oh, no, you put them in the graveyard. That's
the graveyard. Yeah, you put them in the graveyard, but you put one in your hand.
You put one in your hand, and it doesn't care about card types.
Yeah, and it has flashback, so you can do it twice.
The flashback is 7, and this is a deck that doesn't kind of want to get to 7 mana. It kind of wants to close out quicker than that. But
what about Pieces of the Puzzle? You could play that too to search for Exhume. And you could bend your creatures and get the Exhume or the looting.
Yeah, no, I think blue really benefits this deck. I think it becomes a very different game plan.
Yeah, and then you can cut the Dragon Fangs. You don't really need the trample. You can play the blue one for the flying.
Yep,
and you can still play Dragon's Breath because you don't care about the color really. You just want to bend it.
Yep, I think all these different versions are interesting in their own right, but they're still lacking that certain something that would let them be a serious deck, if you will. Yeah. I think they're very solidly like tier 2 style deck lists where a good pilot can do well with them, but you're kind of dependent on your matchups, whether your opponents draw their sideboard cards early or late. I think there's a lot of variables involved here that, make this kind of a risky choice. I think it's a cool deck. And as I mentioned before, the big thing is 4 Exhume. No other reanimation. Which, I think I'm gonna.
Well, Mike, it sounds like maybe you would like a rarity shift.
Yeah, we're gonna go into a little segue here. I am super pumped on Eternal Masters, and I think a rarity shift of Reanimate would help this deck a whole bunch. Reanimate is 1 in black. It's
just black.
Oh no, it's just 1 black. Return target creature from a graveyard to play, lose life equal to its converted mana cost, which would slot into this deck just fine. I would have no issues with that. Like, take 8 for a threat. Okay, that seems reasonably balanced. Obviously, it's got Annihilator on it, so it's not dreadfully balanced, but there could be worse things.
Well, and I would say the other reason that's okay for the format, since we're going down that path, is there's no Entomb style effect, so you can't just grab whatever you want. You still would have to figure out a way to dump this creature before you're able to reanimate it. We're not talking about like a turn 1 Dark Ritual, Entomb, reanimate, and then B for something else. I don't know.
Yeah, like I think that rarity downshifts are a big thing, right? Like Eternal Masters is going to be able to pull from all of Magic's history. Anything except the anti-cards, really. Like, anti-cards and reserve list. Anything else, fair game.
And we've benefited greatly from rarity downshifts. Gutshot was not a common originally. And Ornithopter was also originally not the common. It was printed as a common, I want to say like M11, something weird.
Really? That recently? I thought it was...
It's only very recently. I don't know if I've talked about this. I run Ornithopters over Flayer Husks in my deck, and so having access to that card has helped me out a lot.
Yeah, and I think rarity downshifts are very interesting because with the New World Order, the design principle that WotC's been using, the only things that can be commons are things that are very easy conceptually. And so you see stuff like Scion of the Wild, which is a 1 and 2 green for a star. Stars are equal to the number of creatures you control. That was printed as a rare in multiple sets, in multiple core sets and expert level expansions. And it got downshifted to a common in Modern Masters 2015.
Yes.
So I think one of the big things to consider when we're talking about like rarity downshifts are complexity. And also, where's the demand for it? Because I've seen a lot of people talking about, maybe we'll get an Oubliette reprint. Because Oubliette's very expensive in paper. And it's not cheap online either. But my question is, I don't think Oubliette can get reprinted as a common anymore.
Well, but it's still okay if it doesn't because it was printed as a common once.
But I'm curious if Oubliette is a strong enough effect to be printed as uncommon. Because it's definitely too complex of an effect to print it common.
Well, think of Oubliette was originally printed as a common. But then think about, like, Fiend Hunter, Banisher Priest, not O-Ring. Okay, they've done it at a common, but a lot of the creatures, I don't know, it's sort of an even split, because O-Ring, Faceless Butcher, Journey to Nowhere are all commons.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, it's got a chunk of text on it about,
the auras,
auras and +1/+1 counters. I believe it's only +1/+1 counters as well. I might be wrong on that, but it does some weird, complicated things. And while, yes, this is a Masters product, and they have shown in the past that they're willing to get a little bit more complicated with their limited environments for those, I still think that it's one of those things where they have to consider that. Because I think Oubliette is fine. As we've discussed, it's a bad Journey to Nowhere in most cases. And I don't think it would wreck limited at common. But for example, Lightning Bolt has been a common for years, and it got reprinted as an uncommon in Modern Masters 2 for the sake of its limited implications. So, I mean, we all kind of have our wish lists. I think that Pyro and Hydroblast are shoo-ins for this set. I think they're old, they're eternal playable, and they don't unbalance draft at all. Like, it gives you a sweet piece of sideboard tech during a draft, so I think they could reprint those at common. Price drops. Great for us. I think Chain Lightning is ripe for a reprint. We've talked about that in our first episode, It's a $16 card, and there's no reason not to reprint it, even at uncommon.
Yeah, it's a sorcery.
Yeah.
Who cares? I think my wish list involves Days.
Certainly, Days would be great for helping free up the Mitgo economy. I think it could definitely see reprinting at an uncommon level because of complexity, but, again, Go people open a lot more product because it's cheaper in the end, and I think days will come down to a reasonable level. But I think we're probably getting a decent amount of reprints of staples that are expensive and called for and sought after. But I guess the real question is, what archetypes are we going to see for
draft? We have no idea what the mechanics are going to be or anything. The only thing we know is there's going to be Force of Will at Wasteland.
Yeah.
That's like it.
So a lot of people have talked about how the fact that Death and Taxes is a legacy deck with every single card in it not on the reserve list. Every piece of that deck could be reprinted here.
I think a lot of people think Rashad and Port will be reprinted too.
I literally just on Friday traded off a copy of Rashad and Port because I wanted to get out of that because I'm pretty sure it will get reprinted. But there's not really much common or uncommon stuff in that deck. And I don't think they're shifting Swords to Plowshares down to common anytime soon.
No, I definitely don't think so. That's been an uncommon since Alpha.
Yeah, and even in supplementary products to this day, it's still super premium removal. It is 1 mana to get rid of a threat, gets around Indestructible. The only thing it doesn't get around is Hexproof and Shroud. So, I think it would be interesting to see some sort of, efficient white removal. I'm not sure Swords is what we want. And I'm not sure Path is either.
No, those are both going to be uncommon effects. Would you take Would you take Exile at a common? Exile was originally printed as a rare, but it costs 4 mana, and the other two are just way better.
Yeah, I think I just don't know. I feel like I want some sort of white removal effect that's pretty efficient, eternal playable efficient, but not 1 mana exile threat with no questions asked. That's kind of more where I'm sitting.
Well, we have Journey, but you're looking for an instant, right? Because we have Journey, we have O-Ring.
I think the instant speed is old. I'm glad you pointed that out. The instant speed is very important because, Journey to Nowhere against a black deck is functionally a 2 mana sorcery speed exile effect. And it's pretty much permanent. Unless you bounce it yourself, they're not getting rid of it.
But against a lot of other decks, who knows? I've totally blown people out with Re-Revelation.
Yeah. And I think that there's nothing that comes to the top of my head that would be great as a piece of white removal, but I'd love to see some sort of white removal spell get downshifted that's pretty effective.
What if it was a Condemn?
Condemn I'd be okay with.
Condemn is an uncommon. I could see that as being a common.
That's the one it puts to the bottom of library or shuffles in?
It doesn't get rid of it totally. It puts it back in your deck.
Okay, and it still has the gain life equal to toughness, I think?
I think so, yeah. I have to look up
so
the card.
It's kind of an inverted, weird take on Swords, and I'd actually be okay with that. It definitely becomes a 4-of in white decks. One of the things I had talked about that I think would be super interesting is Astral Slide.
At a common?
Astral Slide is a build-around. I think that's the big thing.
Astral Slide has always been an uncommon, right?
Yes. It's only actually seen a couple printings. So, Astral Slide is this... I feel like this is one that I'm going to have to pull it up so I can quote this exactly. Astral Slide was a huge part of a deck in, I believe it was Onslaught block. Astral Slide is an enchantment for 2 and a white. Whenever a player cycles a card, you may remove target creature from the game. If you do, return it to play under its owner's control at end of turn.
Now look, you were just talking about complexity. This is about as complicated as it could get.
Sure.
Common.
It references a mechanic that is not in every set, and I definitely think that this is something that New World Order wouldn't allow. But this is my dream.
This is your dream. Okay. Yeah. Astral Slide is a fun card, by the way, for anyone who's never played with it. It's a very fun card.
Well, the thing is, it's so versatile. You can cycle something, and it also triggers off your opponent, which is worth noting.
Also, power level-wise, I just can't see them printing this at a common. They have printed this in Vintage Masters, and it was an uncommon there.
Yes. I think it's just an interesting build-around, and I'd love to see cards like this, maybe of a lesser power level, that still have this very unique build around. Because Astral Slide, oh boy, this goes right into Jeskai Kitty. I think my solution for this would be building some sort of blue-white value ETB thing.
Oh, this could go into Reality Acid real...
Oh, yeah. It does only hit creatures, so you can't actually hit the Reality Acid with it, which would make it just busted. I think one of the interesting things is it does trigger off your opponent's cycling as well.
Oh, yeah, sorry, you touched on that. Go ahead.
Yeah. It does, and that's a non-negligible thing in Pauper. Like, Mono Black has been running between 1 and 4 Baron Moors since as long as I can remember. And while sure, against Mono Black, you're not really trying to exile their creatures and bring them back because that's going to hurt, it can help with that. The other thing I like about Astral Slide is, if you've got a ton of cycling stuff and you've got enough damage on board for lethal, you just cycle all of it and you bounce their blockers out of there.
Also worth noting is that Astral Slide was not the win condition in this deck. It was the one that dealt damage when you cycled, which was a red enchantment.
Lightning Rift.
Yeah, so Astral Slide, like you said, is a great utility card, but it actually doesn't win the game on its own. So that is kind of worth noting that maybe it could be downshifted.
All I'm going to tell you here is, just imagine this in a black-white shell with Grey Merchant.
I don't want to imagine that.
The awkward thing is, even if you had 4 Grey Merchants and you targeted all of them with it, they'd all hit for different amounts, but this is like one of my dreams. This is definitely like a weird build-around. I agree, I don't think it's a good thing for them to reprint this at Common. I do, however, think it would be incredibly interesting and definitely bolster the kitty decks, the core Skyfisher decks, while also enabling like new archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
It also is just absolutely brutal against certain token decks. Like, it just kills tokens when you cycle cards.
Take that, Saproling Swarm.
Sprout Swarm.
Sprout Swarm, I hate that card.
I wouldn't mind Sprout Swarm as a reprint at Uncommon for that. I don't think anyone's clamoring for that card. I don't know if you've ever played Time Spiral Block Draft, but Sprout Swarm is an unfun card in a limited format.
It's also unfun in Pauper.
I mean, no one really plays it except Midnight Guard, Presence of God, and Snowgo.
Yeah.
And Snowgo, it's just... I would not blame Sprout Swarm for the reason Snowgo isn't fun to play against. I would say it's the rest of that tower of weird control cards.
Snowgo is a control deck that uses Snowlands. So it's a variant on Drago. It's just called Snowgo. It plays Scred.
It plays Scred.
That's why I played Snowlands.
It plays Mystical Teachings. It's generally not viewed as a fun deck. But
it is a good deck.
Oh,
and the reason that I think we like it is because it's a deck that plays Mystical Teachings that's not a blue-black control deck. Mystical Teachings is a great card. You could play it in more than just blue-black.
Yeah. Well, it does. It's a 5-color Teachings deck, basically.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of, like, other interesting things. Like,
that we could print at Common.
I wouldn't mind, and hear me out on this, either Kitchen Finks or Murderous Redcap. What I'm thinking about is they're value creatures. Like,
there's undying creatures at Common. Like, shouldn't there be good persist creatures, I guess?
Well, yeah, and I'm thinking about the Project X deck, the Ivy Lean combo, where you use Ivy Lean Denizen, which puts +1/+1 counters on creatures when a green creature enters the battlefield, and then you put it on. And if you have a persist creature.
I think you just answered your own question, because what you're suggesting then, because Visceria Series is a common, is that Malira combo become a deck in Pauper.
Well, it already kind of is. It just... I want there to be a better combo deck than Vinestorm. I want there to be a better combo deck than Blue-Green Splice onto Arcane. I want some...
Petal Festival? But that has such a cool name.
I don't like that name for it.
Petal Festival. You call it Hippie Party if you want.
I don't like that name. I don't like Petal Festival as a name because it makes me think it's running Lotus Petal. Because no one hears Petal and thinks, oh, Petals to Insight. I'm going to get in on this Kamigawa action.
It's interesting that you bring that up because, yeah, with the banning of fairies, there's not really a tier 1 combo deck in Pauper anymore. The closest thing we have to it is like the Kiln Fiend deck, and it's just, is that really a combo deck? I don't think so. It's more of a, all these cards work well together, but it's not like an infinite combo, like Petals.
Yeah.
Or the Familiars deck was.
And there is like a weird mono blue Familiars that uses the mill thing, Sage Road Denizen.
Yeah.
And it's like snapping stuff and untapping lands.
But that's just so much worse without Cloud.
Yeah, it is a shadow of its former self, definitely. And I think that we need some sort of combo deck to show up. And I'm a fan of Project X because, it's on its face, it is a fair deck until it gets the combo assembled. It is
I'm familiar with this deck.
So it runs a bunch of persist creatures, it runs Ivy Lane Denizen, it runs a bunch of cool sack outlets. And the goal is, Ivy Lane Denizen says whenever green creature comes in, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And then all your persist guys are green. So, for example, you're in Safehold Elite, which is just a 2/2 with persist for 1 and a hybrid green-white.
Mm-hmm.
So, you play this guy out, you get the Ivy Lane Denizen, and you get a sack outlet. And whenever you sacrifice it, it comes back, it tries to put a -1/-1 counter on it with persist. You target it with Denizen's ability, because it saw a green creature come in, and the counters cancel each other out.
Right, so it's an infinite combo with infinite scrying.
Infinite scrying, or you run Nantuko Husk as, an infinitely large creature.
This feels good to Pauper for me. Having infinite life gain in Pauper, and then infinite scrying is infinite damage. Like, I don't know.
Well,
that's a tough sell for me.
Well, the deck already runs a couple copies of Essence Warden, which can make it infinite.
Okay, yeah.
And yes, you're removing one piece, but this is already, at earliest a turn 4 combo deck. And turn 4 gives a lot of decks a lot of time to dig answers out. And it is green-black, which don't have counter spells, The closest we get is Vines of the Vastwood. There's not a whole lot of interaction that you can do with the hard control decks. The interesting thing is, once the combo's online, Edict effects are very bad against them.
Yes.
Because I've played this deck, and I played against a mono-black player who tried to Edict me, and I was just like, alright, I sack this. Comes back with Persist, put the counter on it. And it is very impervious once it gets that combo there. But and up until that point, it just plays value-oriented creatures. The interesting thing is, even if they did reprint Murderous Redcap at common, it's not green. So you can't infinite loop Murderous Redcap.
That's true.
You could infinite loop Kitchen Finks and gain infinite life. Technically not infinite, because the rules dictate that we must choose a number of times. But
yes, you must choose.
But I definitely think that something like that could be interesting, because I don't see, outside of that deck, I think you run Kitchen Finks would fit fine in mono-white Soul Sisters. Like, it's a good chumper, gains 2 life when it comes in a second time. I don't know, it's not significantly bigger than Lone Missionary. It's more mana. I don't know, something like that I wouldn't mind. I'm trying to think of other stuff that could be interesting for us to see.
Spoilers come out tomorrow, so we're probably way off base
Well,
here.
Here's the interesting thing. Spoilers come out tomorrow. Probably nothing relevant for us comes out in spoilers tomorrow.
I'm trying to think about what I want. What do I want?
What interesting artifacts could you get?
It's like
not Servitor. Retriever.
That'd be
could
fun.
Interesting.
I was like, the only one I play in like any affinity deck is Signal Pest, which could be cool because that would enable, like, there's a colorless build I've been like kicking around for a while, but it's lacking some like evasive punch.
Signal Pest would be sweet at common. I would love that because it's colorless. It fits into any aggro deck and just
it makes like every aggro deck better.
Mono White would love that. Like it's a half of an Anthem. It's hard to remove in combat. It's a deck that's already going wide enough that, you're not super dead to Edict effects. It doesn't like Chainer's, or not Chainer's Edict, even Car's Justice at all, but
I think it's a weak enough card. Like even in Modern, sometimes it's just like it's a little too weak.
Yeah.
So in Pauper, where you have access to like trickery against that deck anyway, and Lightning Bolt, and XYZ removal spells, maybe it's not so bad.
I'm going to toss something out there. We have had access to Nausea and Shrivel. Everything gets -1/-1 effects.
Yes.
We also have even Car's Justice, which is 2 damage to each creature and each player. What would you feel about, because Wizards keeps releasing some variant on a 1 and 2 black, all creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. Mm-hmm. Sometimes with a little bonus tacked on, what was the one in the Theros block? It's something of the gods. I don't know. Everything was something of the gods in that block. But it was 1 and 2 black, everything gets -2/-2, scry 2.
Drown in Sorrow?
Drown in Sorrow. There we go. Some sort of effect like that. What would you feel about that? Because for me, the big
even older is Massacre. Massacre is not uncommon.
Massacre's an uncommon. They've never printed a -2/-2 effect.
Is that new elf? Is Eyeblight Massacre common?
I believe.
No, I don't think.
I believe Eyeblight Massacre, because you would still play that in a mono black list as kind of a reset button.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea of getting soft Wrath.
I could get behind that. I don't think actual Massacre would be good because then
it's a color hoser. It's very
and then it's that's exactly the deck that mono black wants to be playing Massacre against. So
and I think the interesting thing is a lot of them are sorceries, so it kind of bricks your turn because you're gonna if you use it on your turn and you've got a bunch of creatures, it might kill some of them. It might make some of them have 0 power. Mono black doesn't run a whole lot of stuff besides Gourmet Angler with more than 2 power. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the stuff is 2/2s. So I would love some sort of Massacre, Drown in Sorrow effect. I think something, I forget what the original version of it, but because they keep reprinting similar mass debuffs. The original, I think, was 2 and 2 black. And I'm okay with turn 4 as a Wrath point.
Yeah, that's actual Massacre, 2 and 2 black, but Massacre is just you can play it for free if you control Swamp and your opponent controls the planes.
Yeah, and I think there's a version that's the same thing without the free casting cost.
Okay, yeah. I think that'd be fair. I mean, Evankar's Justice costs 4. I don't see a reason why you couldn't also have it, because arguably the -2/-2 is a downside sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I kind of want to see an effect like that with no buyback or any way to easily recur it. I think something like that would perhaps do some interesting things because it does give a way to kill Delver. It hits a chunk of Affinity. It hits a lot of mono black. It's actually fine in the mirror. It does just kill everything in white weenies for the most part.
Yeah, but then it's they're running Avankar's Justice anyway, which some mono black list runs a 1 of, so...
Yeah, and I think just having more options for us makes us a healthy format.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be interested in some sort of effect like that, and maybe something like Bound in Silence with a minor upside on it. Just a little, I like the idea of a Wrath that scries afterwards, because then, even if it wipes your side of the board, you get a little bit of time to get some more information and rebuild your board state. So I think I'd be very intrigued in a mass -2/-2 debuff as an option for Pauper. I'm trying to think of other strictly uncommon things. There's some things. There was a while ago we were talking about. I jokingly told you, I wish they'd reprint a common Sensei's Divining Top, which is obviously a wildly bad idea.
I walked away from this conversation, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, the audience, I walked away. Not really. I came back and forced Mike to explain himself.
Well, my thought was, in Legacy, for example, you'll see non-control decks running it, just as a way to dig a little bit deeper, using the pay 1 mana, look at the top 3 cards, rearrange them. I would love to see And this isn't a reprint thing, because I don't know if one exists that has just that ability.
Just the filter, the constant ponder.
I think we had talked about this, and we kind of came to the idea that, a colored enchantment, so something in either red, maybe green, that has the look at the top 3 cards, rearrange them for, maybe 2 mana, just so it's a little bit less accessible. And then maybe, sacrifice this enchantment, draw a card.
Yeah. So sort of a much... It's still very powerful, but much more fair and not blue top.
Yeah. I think that would be a very interesting effect to have in Pauper, to, kind of be able to give a form of card advantage to non-blue decks, and maybe it would work as a bit of a balance thing, because it is a soft ponder. It doesn't have the shuffle option, so,
You're stuck with what you have.
You're stuck with what you have, but it does allow for some card filtering, and maybe it actually goes in white, because I think white is one of the weaker colors in Pauper.
And I know we're going off the charts on Color Pie here, but if we went by Color Pie every single time, everyone would be playing mono blue 24/7, because nothing else would be good.
I mean, I guess, but and we definitely strayed off with hypothetical cards, but I definitely think some sort of Wrath, more build around cards, because I love when new decks show up that are actually competitive, and they have Mono Black changed completely when Grey Merchant got released. Grey Merchant was a huge shift. Because before that, Mono Black was just kind of a super grindy deck using Chittering Rats and a lot of the stuff it uses today. It didn't run Oubliette because it didn't have a reason to. But I think any sort of card that forces people to think about, can I build a new deck that no one's ever seen before in this format, is good. Again, I don't think Astral Slide is actually healthy for our format, but something in that vein, where it kind of generates ideas for a brand new deck.
One of the cards I saw on the Reddit page was a Guttural Response.
Ooh! As
a downshifted card.
I'm actually A-okay with Guttural Response.
But isn't Pyroblast just better?
Yeah. And
that's okay.
Well, it gives green access to a way to deal with counterspells.
Yeah, that's
I'm actually 100% okay with Guttural Response. That seems fine to me. I'm okay with...
So narrow,
It's super narrow, it's super simple. It's something that could see a reprint in common.
And it does something kind of powerful that deck and doesn't have access to.
Exactly. I do worry what that does to Boggles, because Boggles is already a very good deck, and they will run that.
But what are they countering? Counterspells? I mean, obviously, yes. Obviously, it's going to be a counterspell. But is Counterspell even really that good against them?
I mean, if they're countering an Armadillo Cloak, sure.
Or Daze.
Yeah, that's why I definitely think Guttural Response is a fine addition to this format. I think nothing about that card, to me, says this unbalances everything.
Yeah.
And I definitely think there is a safe zone of of sideboard cards are generally safer than main deck cards, because they only come in after game 1. Some of them are for very narrow matchups. Guttural Response is only good against a blue deck. It's actually just stone cold unplayable against anything else.
You can't even empty cast it.
No, you can't. It just serves one purpose, and I'm okay with cards like that. But I would be interested to see that, just to see what happens with it. And I think Elves would probably play it, because Elves really wants to resolve that Distant Melody.
Yeah, I can see that.
Slivers might play it? I don't know. I haven't seen Slivers played in so long that I don't even know what that deck looks like now. I'm assuming, much like before, it's a bunch of Slivers.
It's still green-white.
Yeah.
There's some Slivers in it.
It's still green-white, sometimes white-red, sometimes... always firmly tier 1.5 or so, it's just on the cusp.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think...
I think As far as slivers go, what it's missing is one of the evasive slivers, like Gale Rider is a rare. Even
there's a common flying one, but it's blue. And then you're stretching into 3 colors.
Well, okay, I guess on color, the trample one is an uncommon or a rare.
Yeah, it's also like a very expensive one, too.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, that deck is just like one good evasive sliver away from being good, in my opinion. But yeah, it's because a lot of the common slivers are just the beat stick slivers, which is fine, but, you know, they're missing out on a lot of the really cool sliver abilities at uncommon and rare.
Yeah. So what would you think about slivers? I've heard referred to as 12 Lord because it runs 12 Lord effects. Every creature of a certain type gets +1/+1. Mm-hmm. How would you feel about was it Legions Lords? Because that's where Goblin War Chief comes from.
Yeah,
the War Chief cycle.
Those are all uncommon. I worry about a card like Goblin War Chief. The other ones I'm not as worried about.
What about the Elf one?
Maybe I'm a little worried about the Elf. Is that Elvish Champion? No.
No. But I believe Elves was the green tribe for that block. I could be wrong.
I don't know why it wouldn't be.
And they also reduce the cost of everything. But in Goblins, I don't think that half of it matters because
I'm more worried about them all getting haste.
I don't. Does Goblin War Chief even haste?
Yes, Goblin War Chief is all other goblins haste.
Never mind. Terrible idea on my part. I'm going to pretend I never said that.
I think it's fun. I just think a 3-drop Lord that makes Goblin Matron cost 2 and gives all your goblins haste sounds terrible.
Point well taken. You know, I respect that, and you're probably right. Let me counter with the cycle of Goblin Ringleader. That was from Apocalypse. It was a group of creatures that all had a tribe associated with them. And it said, they were all over the place. Like it's Sylvan Messenger, Goblin Ringleader, and then 3 others that no one plays. Because goblins and elves are, the most viable eternal tribe.
Now, I know Sylvan Messenger. They've reprinted that a few times, haven't they?
Have.
But not Ringleader.
Not Ringleader.
Presumably because he is haste.
Well,
Sylvan Messenger had trample.
Yeah. But the big thing is you get to dig through, you reveal the top 4 cards of your library, and each creature that shares that shares a creature type with the creature you just played goes into your hand. So Goblin Ringleader says, look through the top 4. Take every goblin from those top 4, put them in your hand, the rest get put on the bottom of your library. How would you feel about that? Because it does give card draw to a couple colors that don't get as much.
I'm okay with that. I think on paper, it's a good way for those 2 decks to gas back up. But I don't know if those decks, like Goblins maybe, but Elves doesn't need that. Elves has Distant Melody.
Yeah. I don't think Elves runs Sylvan Messenger. I don't think that...
Oh yeah, they could run it now even, and they don't.
No, they don't.
Because it was never downshifted to common.
No, the whole cycle. I forget what they were referred to, but they were uncommon in Apocalypse, and I think the only one that's seen a reprint was Sylvan Messenger in Origins. I'm okay with the Goblin one. Again, I've said I like Goblins as a deck, and it does give it a bit of an advantage, but I don't know. It helps them gas back up in a color that doesn't get a lot of gas. So,
that being said, we allow Goblin Grenade in our local meta, so we might have to revisit that if Goblin Ringleader gets a reprint.
I mean, yeah, but it does also mean, you flip 4, you get to land 2 Goblin Grenades and a Goblin.
Now, this is interesting, right? So, if you're playing Goblin Ringleader, and, do you play Tarfire now? Because that doesn't seem as bad.
Oh, actually, I think you would. I think I might. In that case, I would probably consider swapping out some of my bolts for Tarfire.
Yeah, it's 1 less, but you get to hit it off Ringleader, and you can tutor with Matron. Suddenly, you have 8 cards in your deck that can go get the Tarfire, or ostensibly hit the Tarfire, and that seems a lot better than Bolt in that particular case.
Well, I don't know. I think Goblin Ringleader is definitely a dicey on the edge. It definitely hits the worry zone for complexity because it is not a super simple effect to understand. It does cost 4, which is about the top of curve for goblins.
Very expensive. I mean, would you play Beetleback Chief?
I have played Beetleback Chief in that deck, and it's fine.
Okay, well, this is better, I guess. But yeah, what I mean is, like, it's a 4-drop that does something.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at the other ones here. Like, Sylvan Messenger and Ringleader are the only ones that are really relevant.
Well, this one's humans?
The white one's soldiers.
Okay, yeah, that's not very good.
There is that soldier tribal white weenie build that cropped up a while ago.
You play Thraven Inspector. She's a soldier, right?
I think so. The blue one is Merfolk, which is just miserable.
Yeah, because no one plays that.
The black one is Zombies.
And you can regenerate it, which seems...
Yeah, it's 4 mana for a 2/1, but I don't know if I hate that.
Ringleader's just the best one.
Yes, because it's an eternal playable tribe that shows up in our format already, but doesn't get card draw. I definitely think that there's room for that, maybe. You know, I don't want to make a call on that. It definitely gets to the point where it's getting close on power level and complexity, but I don't know, Ringleader could be an interesting addition to our format, I think.
Yeah, I could see that.
So anything else that you can think of in EMA that you're hoping for? Like, no matter how pie in the sky it is, like reprints for even other formats that you just want to see the price go down?
I would like to think that, of course, everyone has their own wish list.
Yeah, but we're talking specifically about you.
I'm hoping Zendikar fetches get a reprint, like half and half, because I don't know if they'll redo them for standard. But I also kind of hate for them to just put them in a master set where they're going to be kind of inaccessible.
Yeah.
So I'm not 100% on that.
I think they're going to wait for Zendikar fetches. I think the big issue with reprinting the fetches in standard recently was the fact they also printed the dual lands with basic land types.
Yeah, I think, like, maybe it's just because I'm on Eldrazi right now. I think Chalice kind of needs a reprint. It's had one, but it's a $40 card, and it's like...
What about Ancient Tomb? I'd love to see Ancient Tomb reprinted.
Yeah, Ancient Tomb's a reprint I could swing.
Common?
No.
I'm fully kidding. That's way too much.
But I think Ancient Tomb could see a reprint.
Yeah.
Because it's an uncommon. It's not particularly valuable card. I mean, it's $15, but it's not like crazy, you know.
And it does see play in Legacy, so you know, and EDH, which they said they were going to support slightly.
I think it's one of the fairer soul lands, honestly.
Yeah, it hits you for 2 every time.
Yeah,
so.
and I know, like, City of Traders, okay, maybe I'll lose my City of Traders, which actually does kind of stink. But yeah, getting, like, there are some games where I have, like, 2 Ancient Tombs. Like, that's my mana this game.
You better have efficient, fast, hasty threats, otherwise you're going to be boned real quick with that damage racking up. So I guess apart from that, you know, there's not a whole lot that I'm looking forward to in terms of reprints. I'm going to be interested to see what it's like, see if it's a good draft environment, because I do like limited every now and then.
There's a couple of PPTQs in the area if you're interested in going. Of sealed, the EMA sealed. It's going to depend on the set. We're going to have to see tomorrow, like, what the spoilers start to bring. This set might be total garbage for all we know, you know. Wizards could have really screwed the pooch on this one.
Yeah, but people will still buy it for the chance to open those foil forces and those foil wastelands.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And they've already hooked us with the money cards, so...
Yeah. So, I guess I'm optimistic, but I'm generally an optimistic person about things even when I know they're going to be terrible.
But next week we'll be able to see how right or wrong we were.
I would just love to be vindicated by one thing that we discussed today actually happening.
You saying you want to Vindicate reprint?
Oh, yeah. Vindicate could get reprinted.
Is it Mythic? I don't know. They just reprinted that kind of Mythic, that kind of Vindicate as a rare, so I'd say Vindicate.
I think it would be fine as a rare for limited, but yeah. So next week we'll probably recap and, you know, tell you that nothing we said actually panned out. But I think that's it for today. So
we'll see you guys next week. This was Color Commentary. I'm Adrian Gonzalez.
And I'm Michael Petchek.
Also, special thanks to Elle for the use of his song Quantitative off the album The Brick Tape. You can find that track and more great ones over at his SoundCloud, soundcloud.net/LLL. Also, follow us on Twitter. We're at Color Commentary. You can also find us on YouTube, Color Commentary. And if you have any suggestions or deck ideas, feel free to email us at colorcommentary@gmail.com. That's where new HJ sent us in his deck list, so feel free to hit us up there, and we'd love to do your deck on the next episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. This has been Color Commentary.